Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about file uploads and specifically image uploads in the latest Next.js app router. So what we want to be able to do is upload an image, click on a button, and then at the OS level we should see our file picker here. And let's say I have some image that I want to upload here. Let's say we're building an app, create your gallery, and users should be able to upload an image, and we're just going to display that in a nice layout here. I just uploaded one image. I may want to have another one. I'm going to click on open here, and I'm uploading it here to a service called Pinata. I'll talk about it in a second. And you can see here I'm uploading images. So when you want to do something like this, there's a bunch of things that you need to pay attention to. So you need to render some UI here, typically with the HTML input file type to allow a user to pick an image like this from their computer. I'm on Mac, so this is going to have a different design than if you're on Windows because this is at the operating system level. When a user has picked a file, we want to put it on a CDN, and then of course we want to view the image. We want to get the image from that CDN, ideally with some kind of access control. So we're going to use so-called signed URLs. So we can, for example, constrain how long the user can view that particular URL, because maybe it's paid content and they should only view it when their subscription is active. We want to do image optimization here. The image is in webp format, for example, or a different size. Also the Next.js image component, how can we use a provider like Pinata with the Next.js image component? I'll show you that as well. So there's a bunch of things that you have to pay attention to with image uploads, and I'll walk you through there step by step in this video. And by the way, technically you could manage all of that yourself, perhaps with a traditional cloud provider, but there are many benefits of using a dedicated provider, a provider that has specialized in image and file uploads. And that's where the sponsor of today comes in, Pinata. Pinata has a history in NFT. So if you've been building some Web3 projects, maybe you've already come across them, but they have learned a lot about that. And now they're expanding also in, you could say, normal applications. So when you have this need for file uploads or image uploads, you may want to consider Pinata. They make it super easy. I'll show you that in this video as well. All right, so let's start from scratch here. I'll show you step by step how this image uploads, file uploads work in the latest Next.js app router. All right, so I removed all of the features here. I just have this markup here essentially in a very simple Next.js application. You can see I just have basically a boilerplate app router project here. We just one homepage here, just one page. And what do we have on this page? We just have this heading here, right? Create your gallery. We have this div here in which we want to place all of those images in a nice layout. And then here we have a button on the bottom that says upload image, right? So now we want to actually allow the user to upload an image. So if the user clicks on this button, there should be some dialogue that we just saw. But if I click right now, nothing happens. And actually, you probably don't want to use a button with on click. You probably want to use an input element here with type of file. And actually, if I show you that, by default, you're going to get something like this, right? So it depends a bit on which browser you're using, but you're going to get something like this. And when you click here, it will open up that dialog on your computer. So a user can then pick an image and actually upload it to a server of our choosing. So in this project, we're going to upload it to Pinata's server. So Pinata is going to provide a lot of things for us, and we will make it so that the user uploads to Pinata. Now, I could also go into the dashboard of Pinata. So they have a nice dashboard here. They have it separated between Web3 and storage. We are going to look at the storage option here. But if you work with NFTs, they have that option as well. But here we can also manually upload if we want. As an admin of the project, you just want to add some images to the project, you can just do that in a dashboard as well. But if we want to allow the user to upload through the UI like this, you probably want to use the input element with type of file. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to style this. So it doesn't look great. We want to have our button here. This looks better, right? So we want to have this styling. So how do we get that? So there are some tricks that people do. So one of the things they will do is just hide this. So you could do something like this. It will be display hidden essentially. Some people claim it's better for accessibility if you do something like absolute and then a very large like offset. So if I do something like this, you can see it's gone, but it's still there. And what we can then do is when we click on the button, we're going to simulate a click on this element, right? So a little bit of hacking our way around here. But what we want to do is when I click on the actual button, I want to do something like the input.click. Right, so I want to simulate a click on this element. So I need to get a reference to this element. How do we do that in React? Well, we do it with refs typically, right? So here I can use ref. I need to import it from React. And then here I can use that. I can go to this input element. I can put that in there, ref. And now if I want to refer to that particular element, I can use that ref object. I do have to make it .current, and then I can just call click. Okay. Now I'm using Next.js here, obviously. That click that happens, right? So on click here, as well as React hooks, those things can only happen in the browser, right? So obviously an event like this happens in the browser, right? So this code needs to run in the browser. Also React hooks, you can only use that in the browser as well. So whenever you use hooks or you're dealing with events, you're going to have to make something a client component. Now, typically I don't recommend that you make the entire page component a client component, but this is a simple project. Technically what you could do is you could put these two elements in some other component, make that a client component, so then this could stay a server component. That's how you would do it, but let's continue here. Now we should be able to open up that dialog here. If I click now, you can see we have our design styling and we can still click to get the OS level picker. So now the user picks some image from their computer. Now what? Now they click on open, but nothing happens here right now, right? So that's another event. We can hook into the change event on that input, right? It will give us access to whatever the user has picked, the file that they pick. We can get a file by hooking into the event.target.files, and it will give us the first file that the user picked. So if I just log this to show you that, I upload an image here, I pick one of these. You can see I'm getting an object here of type file, and it's giving us some information about the file that the user picked, right? Some size in bytes, the type, it's a JPEG image, but that's not enough, right? We actually want to make sure that now it's actually uploaded, in this case, to Pinatas. They're supporting Next.js, so they have a great guide here that we can easily follow. We just have to create an API key to actually upload it to Pinata. So let's quickly do that. Here I can go to API keys. I will just create an API key, and they have options here to specify what that key should have access to. Now in this case, we're going to create one for us as an admin, so we should be able to do everything essentially. And I will just call this the first key. Then I'm going to generate the API key. All right, so they're going to give you some information here. Make sure you don't show it to anyone else. I'm going to copy all of that, put that as environment variables here in my Next.js application. Okay, so I'm going to get some API key. All right, so here we have some information essentially that allows us to upload something to the Pinata server, right? And also so that Pinata knows who is actually uploading to them. That's going to be us. So it can make sure it's actually assigned to us. All right, second thing we want to do is create a gateway URL. And actually I already created one. So this is going to be the URL that you will also see when you, for example, display an image. You need a URL. That's going to be this part is going to be in there. So I will just copy this and I will just say gateway. So then they allow you to use two of their APIs. So they have Web3 NFT features. If you are looking for that, you can upload that with the IPFS method. But what we're interested in here is just their standard files API. All right, so they show you some setup, but we have already done that. And actually here they show you what they like to use as the name for the gateway URL. So I'm just going to use that. Next public, which means that this can be shown on the client. Make sure that it's okay. So make sure that this is public information. That's fine. I'm going to install the Pinata package. npm install Pinata. So here I'm going to go to source. I'm going to create utils, and here we will just sort of initialize Pinata so that we can then use this Pinata variable whenever we need to do something like upload an image to the Pinata server, right? So here we just need to set it up. So here they are using the import server only package, or they suggest to use that. So what you can do is import server dash only. This is like a utility package. We can install that, npm install server only. The idea behind this is that whatever you put in this file can only be used on the server side. So if you, for example, try to use the Pinata variable on the client side and a client component, it's going to throw an error and you can fix your mistake. But you can still use this in server components, in API route, in server actions. So it's just an additional layer of security in the Next.js app router. All right, so let's make sure I have the names here right. So Pinata JSON Web Token. So actually I called it secret JSON Web Token. So let me just get the names right here. Next public gateway URL. Make sure with these URLs that you don't have like a slash in there. All right, so now we have everything set up correctly for Pinatas. So now we can go back to what we had until now, right? So the user can pick some file from their file system, click on open. So we want to make sure that when the user does that, actually that file that we get here in that input, right? So here in the change event, we get the file. We want to make sure that this actually goes to the Pinata server. So typically what you want to do is you probably want to keep track of the uploading state as well. So we may want to create some state here for uploading, right? So is uploading, can be some Boolean. Initially, of course, should be false. But if the user is uploading, maybe we want to display some different text in the button. So for example, if is uploading, we can just say uploading ... and otherwise upload image. Also, probably we want to disable the button when the user is already uploading, and probably the input as well. So then here at the beginning, right before we're actually going to upload, we're going to set that state to true. All right, so then we are still here on the front end in the client here, right? We're just getting the image here. We're still in the browser. How do we get that file to the Pinata server? So what Pinata recommends is that you do new form data. So you're going to get some kind of form data object, and we can add something to there, specifically a file. So we're going to make that part of a form data object. It may be undefined here, so I'm just going to cast it as a file. So then from here, you can do two things essentially with files, file uploads and image uploads. So we are here in the client, right? We're in the browser. Now we could upload directly to the end server, the server where you actually want to have the file. But typically this happens through an API route. So first we're going to create a route handler, and the route handler in turn will upload it to the Pinata server. Now, it depends a bit on your exact use case. There are trade-offs. So essentially what we want to do here is first upload it to our own Next.js server. So we're going to go take this image from the Next.js client browser environment all the way to our own Next.js server. Let's make this async. It's going to be a post request, and we're going to send that data with it. So we do need to create that, right? So in Next.js, the app router, to create an API route, it's very straightforward. It's very similar to just page.tsx. You can just create a route.ts. And that will create an API route at that segment, right? Just like with page.tsx, home page is just directly here. Now I would have an API route right here. Now, typically people do like to add an API in the URL. So you have like /API. Well, what do we want here? /API/files. So here you just create two folders here to make that part of the URL, and I'm going to drag the route.ts in there. So now I have a route.ts, an API route at /API/files, which is what this fetch request will upload that file to, right? So here we are. Here's where we're going to get our file. All right, so here it needs to be a post function that we're exporting because it's going to be a post request. You get the incoming request, we're going to get the form data, and specifically here, we're going to get the file part of that form data. So we're just interested in the file. And then here is where we can finally actually upload it to Pinata's server. And Pinata is going to be easier to do with uploading files than with some traditional cloud providers. Here it's just a very easy way of instantiating Pinata and then just calling this upload.file method in order to actually get started with uploading files. Okay, they will return some upload data. We'll use that in a second, but this should already be enough to get our files on the Pinata server. So let's actually try that out. So here I'm going to click on upload image. I'm going to click on forest, and let's actually see what happens. So we actually see the uploading state. That's nice. All right. So it's going to take a second or so. And actually we want to make sure, of course, that after we are finished with this request, we set the uploading to false again. Let's actually pick Snow here. Let's open up Snow. Let's see what happens. And now after some time, you can see the uploading state disappears. Now, if I refresh here, you can see I have those files, also the first one that we just did here in my Pinata dashboard. All right. So you can see if I click on it. All right. So you can see when I click on it, I am indeed viewing this image. Right. So now we have uploaded a file or files. Now, of course, we also want to display that here. Right. That's the second major part of dealing with images and files. Displaying has its own set of little things you need to pay attention to. But for the upload part, you can see this is very easy actually, right? So here we would route it through our own route handler. But as soon as you have the file here, it's just one method call, and you can get your images right here. You get a nice dashboard out of the box where you can inspect your images on the files. You can group them in a particular group, basically like a category, manage them, organize them. So you get all of that out of the box with Pinata, right? So already pretty easy to get started, I would say. Much easier than with a traditional cloud provider, I would say. But now we get to the second part, which is we also want to display images, right? And it has its own set of little things you want to pay attention to. How does the user even know that it succeeded, right? They don't see the image, they don't know anything. All right, so what we're doing here is here in the browser, we're sending over that file to our route handler. That's our Next.js server, which in turn gives it to Pinata. And then we are sending a response, an empty response here actually. It would be nice if we could send back a URL for that image. So in the browser here on the client, we would be able to show that URL, that image. It would be nice to do that in the same request response cycle. And Pinata allows us to do that. Actually. Very easy out of the box as well. So what we can call is Pinata Gateways create signed URL. So a signed URL is a little bit safer because, for example, we can make sure it's only usable for maybe an hour or maybe a couple days. And so if the user tries to use that URL after that period, they need to get a new URL so we can check if they should still have access. Very important for if if your project is, for example, selling media. So if users should only be able to view images if they are a paying subscriber, well, we can make sure that they can only view it for, let's say, very simplistically, a month, right? And then after a month, they need to get a new URL, at which point we can check if they're still subscribed or not, right? Before we give them the URL. So that's why we want to have a signed URL. So we get a nice utility method here out of the box with Pinata to create that here. We can just specify the ID of the image, essentially the CID, and then when it should expire, here we get the URL, and that is what we want to return to the browser now, right? So now here on the browser, after clicking, we will get that back here, right? So here we will get back a response. I will actually just call it response, and we can parse that as JSON. So here we get the actual signed URL. So now we want to output that signed URL on the page. So how do we make sure that here, for example, what we want to do is have an image tag, and we would like to use that signed URL as the source, right? And we want to have an alt, just uploaded image for now, and we want to style that. But how do we get this this signed URL as the source here? Well, let's create some state for that as well. So it's going to re-render when the state changes, which is what we want. We can just make it an array because we can upload multiple, right? So here we're going to keep track of all the image URL for each one we want to create an image. We will use the URL like this, right? Just standard React. So now we just need to make sure that when we get back that URL from Pinata here, actually add that to the state. So let's see if all of that is working. We should be able to see the image now when we upload something. So now here, if I click on beach, let's see what we get. It's going to upload, takes a second or so. And here I see my image. And actually I forgot the key prop, but that's okay. But you can see now I'm viewing an image, right? So first we were uploading, and if I refresh here, you'll see the beach file is now also, you'll see that the beach file now is also here uploaded properly. And I'm also viewing it now here. So let me actually improve this a bit. And actually I'm going to wrap it in a div so it will look a little bit better. Let me refresh here. Let me just try uploading a couple. So let's try again with the beach. That's going to upload that one. All right. So then we see beach. Let me try forest. Let's see what we get. All right. So now we have forest here as well. And then let me try the snow image as well. And that should take a second or so. And then we have our third image right here. I'm zoomed in a bit. So I just added image uploads as well as viewing them with signed URLs in like very quickly. I get a nice dashboard here out of the box as well. All right, now let's actually see what we get here from Pinata. I can open this image in a new tab, and you can see here I'm getting that file, right? You can see it has a particular URL. You can see it's using my gateway here. It's a huge image because we haven't optimized this further. And let's actually see what we get here. We can look in the network tab, and we can see that we are getting this image from Cloudflare. So they are using Cloudflare for their CDN, and you can see it has a bunch of stuff here in its actual URL. You can see here it has a signature here, so it's a signed URL. So after, well, what did we pick? After 3600 seconds, which is 1 hour, when we would go and use this URL again, we're not going to be able to view it, right? So then you would have to get a new URL, right? So if you try loading this image without the query params, so without the signed URL part, essentially just with the ID, you're going to see that you're not authorized, right? So it's not, if you don't have the signed URL, you're not going to be able to view the image. So you get that access control CDN out of the box. Now, what we also want is some image optimization, because here, for example, we are loading a huge image, but we're only going to display it at a pretty small. So we don't need to load a huge image over the internet. And this one takes about 413 kilobytes of data when you're downloading it over the internet. Also, we probably want to use webp instead of JPEG. So how can we optimize images here with Pinata? Well, very easy. There's another method here, optimize image. So here I can chain that after we're creating the signed URL, but also with a particular width and a particular format. So when you're getting that URL, you can immediately specify some optimizations. So now if I refresh here and let me try again with forest here, it's going to upload this one. All right, so now I have an image again. Now if I inspect this a little bit closer, you can see this is a smaller image, which is what we want. It's not going to be displayed so large anyway. And so this one only takes 77 kilobytes versus what we had before, something like 300 something. So just changing the size of the image is already massive improvement. But also, if we take a look at what we actually got back here from Pinata, or they are using Cloudflare, you can see that it hit the Cloudflare cache, so nicely cached on a CDN. And also what we're getting here is a webp image, right? So now it's not a JPEG anymore. So webp has some other optimizations as well. So you get all of that very easily out of the box with this optimized image method. And again, it would be a lot of work to do this yourself. With a traditional cloud provider, it's a lot of work to make it work properly, taking care of all sorts of edge cases. All right, so this is one way of doing optimizations with images, but there's another way as well. So very quickly, you may also want to use the Next.js Image component. You're going to get this warning by default in Next.js if you're not using it. What is the benefit of using the Next.js Image component actually? Well, everything will still work the same, or it looks like it. So if I just open this up, if I just upload an image here, let's see what we get. All right, so we do have to specify some other things here. So with the Next.js Image component, you need to specify a particular width and height. Now in our case, we have a more fluid layout, so you may instead also specify fill. This is to prevent layout shift. So sometimes when you're uploading an image, it may take some time, as some other content like text may get that was already loaded gets shifted down, for example, when that image is coming in. So if you specify width and height, the browser can already sort of reserve that space. And with the Next.js Image component, you're going to involve your own Next.js server for some optimizations. So for example, if you want to make it WebP or you want to change the size, that's going to happen on your own Next.js server now. And that costs compute, right? So you want to have a little bit of protection here. So we only want to allow certain domains, certain images with only the domains that we allow, specifically allow. That's why we have that option in Next.js in the next config here. So I added that gateway URL to my next config. So what is the benefit now with this Next.js image component? Well, one of the main benefits is simply that you get this massive source set, right? So you can see the source set here has specified a specific image URL for all sorts of different sizes. This is very important when you are getting into responsiveness. For on a mobile, this is going to be less wide. So we want to make sure that we're loading a smaller image. On a desktop, we may have a bigger image, but also, for example, on a MacBook, I have more pixels. So you can actually load a bigger image for MacBooks because they can show more pixels. It's going to look sharper, right? So there's all sorts of things that you can specify with source set. So it generates that source set automatically, but it's going to happen all on your own Next.js servers. So if I just copy the image address here and just paste it here so we can see it, you can see I'm getting it. The image that's currently displayed here on the page here is actually using localhost 3000 as the base URL, meaning this image is coming from my own Next.js server, not from Pinata server anymore. What if we still want to use Pinata server? We want to offload all of that optimization work still to Pinata, right? So the image component also has a source. So basically, whatever you specify here as a source, we can decide what the URL of the loaded images should be. So here the source will be whatever we passed here. That's going to be that Pinata URL. So if we just return that Pinata URL here again, Next.js will just use that. What you also get is the width. It will call this for every source in that source set, right? So there's going to be like 10 different variations here for all these different widths. And we could manually change the URL as well with Pinata. You can add this as query params as well. So just what we did before to optimize the image, you can also do the other way around here from the front end here in the URL to specify the WebP format and then also what width we want to load. If we just keep it on source to make it easy, now if I upload an image again, we will still use the Next.js image component, which will automatically generate the source set for us, but all of the optimization work will still be done by Pinata, which is probably the ideal setup. So now if I copy this, you can see we are back to using that Pinata URL again. Right, Next.js image component is actually a little bit complex, so it's okay if this is a little bit confusing. But I would say this is a very powerful setup that we have right now. This Next.js and Pinata stack for uploading images or files generally. You get all of these things out of the box. Nice dashboard, CDN, optimizing images. In conjunction with the Next.js image component, I think it's a very powerful, modern setup. So if you want to try out Pinata, I highly recommend that you click on the link in the description and that you check them out. Pinata has learned a lot from dealing with NFTs and Web3 uploads, and now they're bringing all of that expertise to your traditional apps as well. So I'm excited to see how far they can take it. I want to thank Pinata for sponsoring this video, and I want to thank you for watching the video as well. Have a nice day and bye.